How would you handle this one? It's called Mel, Karen, and Property Lines by Shortfinger Dizzy. I'm a senior construction superintendent in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The project I'm currently on is a 13-acre site smack in the middle of an extremely affluent area to the north of Dallas. 3 weeks ago, a city inspector that we'll call Joe came into the site office and said that they received a complaint about a sprinkler and soaker line being damaged during excavation for the fire lane. He, my landscaper, and myself went to investigate, discovered where a small fitting had blown out of the line. The landscaper repaired it. I went up to knock on the door to explain to them the issue and informed them of the repair. I got no answer at the door, so I left a card and a note asking them to call me, and they never did. A week later, Joe comes in and mentions that they've reached out again about the noise from the equipment, which is odd because anyone with heavy equipment is currently working on the other end of the property. I again went to speak with them, got no answer at the door, and I left a card again. Yesterday, in walks Joe to tell me that they're complaining about our construction fence, that it's on their property and killing their grass. The fence is 12 feet from their fence, and our specs call for it to be a minimum of 15 feet from the property line. So I pull up our CAD files on the survey plat so I can make sure that we have it placed exact, and realize that their wood fence is 4 feet onto our property. Their house is about 14 inches onto our property too. So during all of this, I get an email from the city asking me to place the construction fence squarely on our property line. The email is sent to me, the apparent homeowner, Joe, and my project manager. I brought the surveyors back out yesterday to pinpoint our property corners and to give us some 10 feet offsets, reference points 10 feet east of the property line for line of sight to measure from. I knocked on the homeowner's door again, and I got no answer. Mind you, every time there were cars in the drive. Fast forward to this morning, my fence crew showed up and they began moving the fence onto the property line, which takes 31 inches, or 2 feet 7 inches, of their driveway, and 18 feet of the road where it ends at the property was previously a cul-de-sac. The client finally reached out, or more accurately, came to the site office in a huff. I explained the issue, I showed him the plat, and he left with some unkind words flowing from him like diesel exhaust on a steep incline. I put a pause on the fence relocation just to soothe the wound. My project manager called him, and I called the city right-of-way engineer and our client. We set up a meeting that just ended. He claimed that our plat was wrong. The engineer and everyone else disagreed. The back and forth went on long enough for the client, who is extremely laid back and a quiet gentleman, to finally speak up and basically say, "Hey, we're just going to go ahead and sell you the property that you've stolen at current market value plus 10%. In this area, that's not cheap. If that's not acceptable, we'll just have you move your fence, cut out your driveway, and use the east side of your home for advertisement. Or you can back off, let these guys work, and we'll give you lifetime use of the area that you currently occupy, so long as there's no more hassling of any kind." The guy asked me if we'd move the fence back out, and I told him no. I agreed to take it off his driveway, but the street and the green space belonged to us. We only did what he asked us to do. The engineer who asked me to move it agreed. "I'd tell you to screw yourself, but I don't think you know how. Not quite malicious, but the fallout was intense." Posted by Rad Salamander 51. Disclaimer, names have been changed to protect the people involved. Me, a 19-year-old at the time. Laura was a general manager and both the sweetest woman and the best boss I've ever worked for. Ted, the manager, the arrogance of White Goodman, and the witchy attitude of Lewis Litt. Once upon a time, I used to work for a small chain of diners known for their golden arches. I got hired shortly after graduating high school and had worked there for almost a year when Laura announced to our crew that Ted had been promoted to assistant general manager. This made several people upset because Ted would go on to use his new authority to exchange favors for raises. A few weeks after Ted's promotion, I woke up on a Saturday feeling 50 shades of terrible, but I got up and did my morning ritual before work. When I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth, I saw that my face and neck were physically green, like Vlasic pickle green. But being 19 and terrified of disappointing management, I finished, got dressed, and went to work. I punch in and head to the back to wash my hands, and Laura is the first to say hi. "Morning, OP. Oh, baby, what is wrong with you?" "I don't know, ma'am. All I know is that I feel terrible." "Baby, why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to let you down." "Honey, you are sick. Something's really the matter with you." Laura pulled out her phone and called the nearest urgent care. "Hello? I need to schedule your nearest appointment for one of my people. His name is OP. What's your birthday? Now your address." "Thank you, ma'am. He'll be right over." "Miss Laura, I can't afford a doctor visit right now." "Don't you worry about that, honey. I'm going to take care of that for you." After a thorough exam and some blood work, the doctor prescribes me a trio of antibiotics and 4 days of bed rest. Can't remember what I had, sorry. So I called my store to speak to Laura after leaving urgent care. "So the doctor gave me medicine and I'm supposed to take 4 days off." "Okay, I'm going to double that for you, and don't you worry, I'll make sure you get paid for all of it." A few hours later, I'm laying in bed watching TV and my phone rings. "Hello?" "Yeah, OP, where the heck are you?" "Is there a problem?" "You can say that. We're an hour into dinner and your butt is nowhere to be seen." "Did you talk to Laura?" "What the heck does she have to do with you not being here?" "Did you talk to Laura?" "I don't need to talk to Laura. Listen, if you're not going on the clock within the hour, I suggest you start looking for other employment." So I did. I got dressed and went to work just like Ted told me and clocked in. And wouldn't you know it, Laura was the first person to see me. "What are you doing here? I thought I told you to go home resting." "I was, but Ted called me a bit ago and told me either I come in or I'm fired." "Did you tell him to talk to me?" "Yeah, and he said he didn't need to." "Is that so? Ted, come back here, please." "I'm in the middle of getting my crap mixed. What's wrong with your face?" "You should have talked to Laura." "Ted, OP is going home and he's going to be home for another 7 days. I don't want to hear a word from you about this, understand?" "Right." The day before I was supposed to go back to work, I got a call telling me that I needed to report to Franchise HQ for a meeting with owner, HR, and Ted. When I got there, I spoke to franchise owner who informed me that Laura was so enraged by Ted's statement that he didn't need to talk to her about my condition that she called HQ and told them everything. I was then subjected to the weakest apology ever delivered by a member of the human race. After what I gathered was a very serious conversation, Ted had agreed to transfer to the franchise's least profitable store, but not until he'd apologized to me for threatening my job. A few months after Ted's transfer, we were informed that his store folded due to a lack of positive leadership. Apparently, his new employees were less than thrilled to have a womanizer for a boss. Last I heard of Ted, he was a detailer for a local cab company. Laura, however, was promoted to regional manager for the way she looked after her employees. They figured she could teach that to other GMs. We're still good friends to this day. Karen made my train go behind schedule, posted by Flying Scotsman 6103. So this happened 2 years back. I thought of sharing it here. I was working as an engineer at a heritage museum, and at the end of the tour of the heritage museum, we had these rideable trains that kids and their parents could ride on to blow off the steam, pun absolutely intended, from the boringness of the tour. So I was given the job of driving these trains. Driving these trains was the best job in the museum, and I was fulfilling my lifelong dream of going on a steam train, blowing the whistle, listening to the kids all cheering and giggling with glee, and genuinely having a good time with my passion. So, as the engineer, you get to decide what train you want to drive for the day. I was going to drive the best steam train in the shed. It was a streamlined silver New York Hudson J3A Dreyfus. Oh man, it was a sight to see, and the whistle was loud and monstrous. Anywho, I decided to take it for a test drive before I took the passengers out for our 1-mile track with tunnels and hills and bends, trestle bridges, and crossing gates. I did the daily routine of oiling the axles, steaming the train, and cleaning the overall look to ensure that it was as shiny and silver as possible. I drove the train in the direction of our train yard. Okay, so let me set the scene. I was going to go through a railroad crossing, and before that, there was a parking lot on the left-hand side of the track, and while there was a whistle post on the other side. So this post, it was there to tell an engineer to blow the whistle before coming to a railroad crossing. I blew the whistle and immediately heard a car honk. I did not have time to turn around. The honk probably woke someone up, or a friendly person saw me coming and did a friendly honk. I went to pick up the cars and drove to the station. There was a crowd of kids and their parents looking at our manager's booth, and there was yelling. I did my usual thing of braking and using my bell instead of my whistle to tell my manager that I'd arrived on time. The manager and an angry woman came out. Let's call her EM, Entitled Mom. Entitled Mom points at me and shouts, "Him!" I got up from my train idling and say, "Me, ma'am? How dare you try to scare my kids and me while we're trying to take a nap?" This was probably the person who honked my car at me. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I was following the sign's directions." "Well, look how traumatized my kids are." Her kids were fawning over the silver Dreyfus, taking pictures, not looking traumatized or scared. My manager says, "Ma'am, he was following directions, and please stop yelling. You're scaring the other kids. So, if you're going to ride, I am going to need to see your ticket." Some kids in line to ride my train's passenger car looked uncomfortable and antsy. They probably wanted the train ride to start. The parents were looking at the entitled mom because they didn't want to deal with their antsy kids. She huffed and said, "Fine, but my kids should ride in the front with the engineer." Entitled Mom gave the ticket to my manager, and my manager looked at the ticket. "Ma'am, first of all, you needed to book the ticket online and choose the seats for your kids and you. The front near the engineer and the back near the caboose is our most popular options. This ticket is for the middle train cars. Secondly, this ticket is for tomorrow, so I cannot let you ride today. OP, start the train." Entitled Mom started to have another tirade with the manager, and I went over to the two kids of Entitled Mom to tell them that I was starting the train. I felt bad for them having a psychotic mother like that, so I gave them a golden train keychain that I gave everyone at the end of a train ride. We were a few minutes behind schedule. "Thanks so much, Entitled Mom," so I yelled, "All aboard," blew the whistle, and left the station a little too quickly. I drove the train, and I was coming up on a railroad crossing and saw the Entitled Mom pulling up to the dropping gates of the crossing. I had a devilish thought in my head. I dropped the speed to 10 to 15 miles per hour. Karen was honking her car and screaming at me. I just looked at her and smiled, putting my hands up, and said, "Hey, I'm just following the rules. You know how it's done? Right then." Posted by Anna K. So, about 15 or so years ago, I was working in a little metalworking firm. Two brothers owned it, about 30 or so workers, metal casting, further processing up to including wires and other things. Bad explanation is bad. And we had about 5 women working in production, me, my mom, and 3 others. One of them was the unofficial sweetheart of one of our bosses. Anyway, Karen, changing the name for privacy, could not do wrong. Whatever went wrong, it wasn't her fault, ever. I had a run-in with her a few times already, and it wasn't the best. But I'm more of this silent type. Let others do what they want, and I'll do my thing, and so on. Us women were mostly there for preparing the product for sending out, washing metal bits, grinding back seams, sorting the small things into good and broken or not fully cast, and so on. I've been working there summers in the 90s with my gran as the unofficial supervisor, and she showed me the ropes. Later, when I worked there full-time, I knew the ins and outs of things, and some tricks that gran worked out along the way. Especially with our washing machines. Imagine them as a big bowl filled with specially formed stones. Add water and cleaning agent, the metal bits, and it would vibrate, and the stones rubbing against the product with soap and water would clean the product from residual oil and other things. One of the machines required a more special touch apart from the throw in, start, and the done. I've been working there long enough and been shown by Gran and Mom how to set up that machine. I polished the metal on top of it, cleaning with tiny spherical little metal bits. Never cared enough to ask what they were made of. It was enough to know how to use it to make things shine. So, one day, I get a call. Boss is asking if I was washing something at the moment and what I was working on. I told him no, I was done with washing. I was just now drilling the last holes and preparing the product for shipping out. He said he'd send Karen down with something time sensitive, and that was that. Karen comes down an hour later. Crate with time-sensitive products has been there for a while, and it's coated with oil, soot, and all things nasty, ready to be cleaned and polished in that special machine. I ask if she needs help or some pointers, since I know that machine is a bit complicated to set up right. She looks at me, dirty and sweaty as I was from actually working, and she was nearly pristine from doing whatever she did with the boss, don't care, keep me out of it, and sniffs. Tells me she knows how to wash them and disappears in the washroom. Well then, if you know. A colleague comes over and asks if she's ever used that machine, and I shrug and tell him, not that I know of. She wasn't very popular there, can you tell? Anyway, I go back to work. Time goes by, lunch, and more time, and then our boss shows up. The product needs to be sent out today. Not long after, there's a shout for me to come to the washroom. Turns out, Karen doesn't know how to use the machine. The whole thing is oily, black, and nasty. Product looks worse than before. She used the wrong cleaning agent, didn't add the polishing powder at the right time, and pretty much screwed the whole thing up. Boss asked me why didn't I say something, help her, intervene, anything. Well, she said she knew what to do and asked colleague if he was there. Door to the washroom is closed, and I have other things to do than to stick my nose where it's not wanted. Do I know how to deal with this problem? Sure. The machine and the stones need cleaning, the product needs cleaning, and it's going to take quite a while. In the end, Karen was allowed to finish my dirty work, and I spent the rest of the day cleaning up her mess. I wasn't allowed to leave the washroom, boss's orders. So, I started a washing cycle with the right agent and no product in it to clean the machine and the stones, sat down and did nothing. And then added the product, more cleaning agent, and powder after the oily gunk was gone, and pretty much spent half a day doing close to nothing while Karen had to do my work. I could have helped her, but us unwashed peasants were not good enough for Her Highness. Entitled Mom Trying to Own My Property, posted by Educational Aioli 944. This is a very complicated story, and I'm not sure if they are the entitled ones or me. My parents acquired several assets a long time ago, and at some point they were almost broken due to my mom's bad decisions. In order to protect the assets, the best option was to put everything on my name, as I was the only minor at that time in the family. I was not even 10, and there's at least a 10-year gap with my sisters. But my mom, who never wanted me to have anything, decided that everything should be on my sibling's name. Moving time forward, when I was still underage, my aunt by my dad's side decided to gift him a property, but because she didn't like my mom, the property ended up under my name. There's a couple of stories, not sure which one is true, regarding this property. So the first story they have is that my dad's dad bought the property, and at some point he was short of cash, so he asked my dad for money. He did give it to him, even if he had several kids and was already married. My mom was not happy about it, and my dad's dad could pay the mortgage. Nobody knows if my grandfather returned the money. Some people said that Aunt A took it with Uncle B, not married siblings. When my grandfather died, A inherited the property. There were conflicts with the will, and later on, she gave it to me. So the second story that they have lined up is that my dad bought it as a gift to my grandfather when he was still single and no kids. My dad paid the mortgage all his life, even after he married my mom and had kids. The property was always on my grandfather's name, and when he died, A inherited it, and later on, she gave it to me. My parents have lived in the property several years. They no longer live there, and they have put money onto that, and they don't pay rent at all, but they cover the maintenance cost. That was the verbal agreement that I had with them. Now, my sister bought a property in the same city. The property is nice, it's just in the same building with her in-laws. She's quite old, and the banks won't give her a mortgage now, over 50. Having a property in that building has caused a lot of problems to my sister, and she would like to have a different property so she's no longer close to her in-laws. On the other hand, my mom has always considered my property as her property, and she wants to give a property in that city to my sister A, but she can't do it because she doesn't have the money to buy another one, and I won't put it on my sister's name. Another agreement is that we will keep whatever is on our name, so I don't get anything but that property, which actually comes from A, not my parents. And my dad also owns half of another property. My mom tried to buy the rest from B and put it under my sister's name, but B put a very high price. I think he didn't want to sell it like that. So the question is, who's the entitled one here? Am I the entitled one because I don't want to give away the property? In other words, does it really belong to my parents? Or is my mom? Ooh, here's a really good piece of information. This will settle the story. It was given to you by your aunt, so you're the legal owner, not your mother, comment says, and OP replies, yes, legally the property is mine, but my mom considers it hers because my dad fully paid the mortgage, story 2, when he was already with my mom. She has put a lot of money in renovations when living there, like a new bathroom, 2 bedrooms that were isolated, new windows, a new kitchen, and there's now GCH, on top of maintenance expenses that they, my dad and her, still pay. I should have mentioned that I have the property, but not the right to use it freely. It belongs to my dad. A wanted it like that, so my dad could use the property, but my mom wouldn't own it. My dad can't sell it. I mean, hey, if your name is on it legally, that is legally yours. What do you think? Psycho Karen demands my house and sues me. Jail time for her with updates. Click the video on your screen. You don't want to miss this insane story, and I'll see you there.